right, everybody, welcome to Depth of Field, the new show from Around the Lens, featuring panel discussions on topics related to photography, videography, and visual journalism. I'm Mark Doyle. Thank you for joining me. I'm a concert photographer here in New York, and I'll be hosting a concert panel with some of my colleagues. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce some of those colleagues right now. We have Zach Lane, who is from New York, right, Zach? Long Island, I believe.
Yep, that's right.
Zach used to work, I used to work at Madison Square Garden as a photographer there. I have Jen Devereaux, who is a photographer based out of Mississippi, if that's right. And then I have Kevin Wilson, who is also based out of New York. So we're going to go to ladies first. Since Jen and I have never really spoken about concert photography, I wanted to talk to you a little bit, Jen, about your background, how you got started in this thing, and sort of what inspired you to actually start shooting concerts.
Yeah, so I started about officially shooting shows about 2008, I think. But before that, I was sneaking in like a camera into shows by way of like a disposable camera, because back then we could take disposable cameras into festivals, but for whatever reason, because digital cameras were somewhat new at that point, we couldn't bring in the digital cameras because those were considered professional. So I would take my little Sony point and shoot, and I'd stick it in a brand new disposable camera box and glue it shut. And then I'd take it into the festival with me, and I'd try to get shots that way. I mean, I didn't get great shots because it was like a little like 6 megapixel camera, but that was where I like started, I guess, shooting shows. And then I got my first credentialed show in 2008 at Taste of Chaos, which was a Vince Unfold and Bullet for My Valentine. And
Nice.
From there on, just kept shooting shows. So,
is that the music that you kind of follow? Are you more into like the metal and rock stuff?
Yeah, I do enjoy metal and rock. That's probably my forte when it comes to what I listen to. I do think that pop music has a lot of the better lighting scenarios, but I more enjoy the metal and rock shows. So that's what I'll be at, those shows.
Speaking of metal and rock, we have another metal and rock photographer here, Kevin Wilson, who's been on a show with me once before, although not a video show, it was an audio show. And Kevin and I have bumped rubbed elbows a bunch of times in the pit in New York at several shows. Kevin, tell us how you got started again, shooting shows and concerts. How did that whole thing evolve for you?
Yeah, so I had actually been shooting probably a good 5 or 6 years before I had actually got into shooting music. And I kind of got into shooting music a bit organic, and I was a little bit late to the game as a lot of other people were. But my introduction was in 2015 to shooting professional live shows credentialed through Dave Navarro. I think we actually talked about it on your podcast last time, where a lot of the stuff that I wind up citing as far as like how I got into the industry was because of Dave. He's a super nice, humble guy. I've known him for many years before actually shooting shows. But he was the first one that gave me the opportunity to be able to shoot shows. And somehow overnight getting access, like all access to Jane's Addiction, turned into me shooting full time, like within days at that point. I think it kind of just snowballed into something that I wasn't expecting, and it was a lot of eyes on me really fast. So I was like, oh shit, now I guess I need to figure out what I'm really doing, because, you know, shooting, street photography and other type of lifestyle photography or abandoned architecture and stuff, it's a lot different than dealing with situations where you're shooting in like really crappy lit situations. You know, lights are constantly changing. So yeah, with him, he kind of opened the door for me very fast, and it kind of just went from there nonstop.
Zach, you and I met at Phil Collins' concert. Was it Phil Collins? Can't remember. I think it might have been Phil Collins, right?
Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah.
At Madison Square Garden, right? And one of those big shows at Madison Square Garden that Madison Square Garden used to do. So how'd you get started in that? We never really spoke about how you actually landed. You were one of the house photographers at Madison Square Garden, you know, one of the greatest venues, you know, on the planet. How did you end up landing that gig and starting to shoot for them?
So actually, before I even started anything with Madison Square Garden, I was working at Hofstra University. It was probably about, I guess, a little under 10 or so years ago now. And I started the photo department there. It was just me. I shot everything there. I shot all games, corporate stuff. I did headshots. I did student life. They had a couple of concerts here and there I shot. And then it was a great job there, and I loved it. I loved the people. I loved everything I was doing. There's a wide variety of things, which I really enjoyed, especially sports. I love sports photography. And then I just always think you can always be bettering yourself. So I was always looking for new opportunities because you never know. And I saw an opportunity at Madison Square Garden through, I think it was LinkedIn. They were hiring for a photo services manager. So I applied. I mean, you never know. I applied for it, and then through multiple interviews, I eventually got it. And the way it worked there, it was kind of what I did with Hofstra University, but just on a bigger scale. So at Hofstra, I was shooting, editing, scheduling everything. I was the one person. At MSG, it was a whole department for that. So it was broke up between 4 different full-time people. And we all essentially did a little bit of everything. We all shot, we all edited, we would schedule stuff as well. So I kind of, we had a team of freelancers that I helped manage, and I helped make sure that all the events, because it's not just MSG. I know that was really the only place that you and I worked together, but MSG owns Radio City. They own the Beacon Theater. So it was all the different venues. They own a couple places outside of New York as well, but it was the photo department managed everything for all of the venues. So it was kind of had to be and all the Rangers, the Knicks games, any type of at Radio City, the Rockettes, any type of events that were going on, even with players out in the community. So with this, it was all. I mean, with MSG, the concert lists were just. It was a great experience to be able to shoot stuff there, especially because it was what I was doing before at Hofstra, just on a bigger scale, and it got some great experience, and I got to meet some great people, obviously, and so it was just it was something that I'm looking forward to coming back when concerts happen again and the world can hopefully return to some type of normal.
Yeah, hopefully we'll get into sort of that conversation in a little bit. Jen, you were actually house photographer also at the Fillmore, right? That in New Orleans, right?
Yes.
For them.
Was that right? Yeah.
What was that experience like? How did you end up landing that job there?
Well, I just made really good connections with some of the people that were handling the media in other venues. And this was a new venue. They had just opened. I knew they were about to open up. So one of the people that was in charge of the media at one of the larger arenas in the area ended up going over to that venue. And she had asked me if I wanted to be the photographer. Actually, I reached out to her and she said, actually, you were on my list of photographers. So as it turns out, we had a good relationship, business relationship. So she hired me on as the house photographer there.
So you started, when did you start that gig?
Let's see. It was 2019. 2019 was one of the first shows they had. So it was a brand new venue. They didn't even have like a full year before the pandemic shut them down. So
you weren't shooting for other house venues. That was the first venue that
was my first house gig. Yeah.
Okay. So how many shows did you shoot at that point? Like before things got closed down?
It was, I was probably shooting 2 to 3 shows a week, like on average. So, I mean, there was a lot of shows and they would add on shows last minute too. So I had my schedule pretty wide open for them so that I could accommodate all the shows that they were having. Since they're a brand new venue, they're obviously getting in a lot of really cool acts for that. So like Foo Fighters, and like they booked Lizzo before Lizzo got as big as she did, and then that place was packed when they had that show finally.
I'm sure. What's the capacity about in that venue?
Oh, that is a good question. I should know that, but I don't. It's not a huge venue. It's a smaller venue, but it's not super small. So
it's like kind of like Hammerstein where I shoot, sort of like
if you've ever been to the House of Blues in New Orleans, it's about the same as the House of Blues in New Orleans, I would say. They have stadium seating in the back, like it's like a riser type seating in the back. And then they have also some VIP seating on the sides, and then the floor, of course. It's not really a huge venue, which which is really great for big shows like Foo Fighters and stuff, because it's a very intimate setting for a band like that. But it's also not like super small either.
Right. So it must have been a good experience for you doing that until everything sort of got shut down and we all lost our house gigs. Kevin, I know you don't really shoot for a specific house, but I know you shoot for specific bands. And I know the Misfits and sort of that whole, grouping of people in the Misfits you've shot for. How'd that all come about when you started landing some of those jobs?
So I met Jerry years ago, actually at a tattoo convention. Very random, super nice. It's like everybody pretty much that has come in contact with Jerry only from the Misfits has always been like, it's my Uncle Jerry. Like he's just always been very genuine, very super down to earth, really nice person. So we somehow kicked it off and he's like, hey kid, take my phone number down. And like, he knew I did photography. I never really pushed anything. We'd go out. I'd spend like 4th of July at their house, lighting off fireworks and stuff. And like, you're a kid, especially like growing up around like the punk rock industry, like the punk rock scene and all that stuff. And you're like, I listened to this music. I never thought that I would be like around these people to begin with, but it was just like no egos. Like everything was just kind of checked at the door and people were just relaxed. So, it just kind of turned into, you want to do some photos for this, you want to like take some photos of that. And then all of a sudden it was like, well, we got this reunion gig coming up. Like, I had already shot some of the other shows that they had. That were, Jerry's incarnation of the Misfits. There's been like 20 different variations.
Different versions. Yeah, of course. Yeah.
So, there was all this wind about the new reunion that was going to be happening. And there was the opportunity that was being posed to me to, possibly shoot some of the shows.
Right.
Now all the members have their own managers at this point. So it becomes like this talk between everybody on whose photographer gets to be able to do stuff, because Jerry's guy is different than Glenn's guy versus Doyle's guy and so forth. And it's like, I know Dave Lombardo, I know Jerry, I know AC, I know Doyle, I do a lot of photo work for all of them on the side. So, but I don't do anything for Glenn. So this like whole, how do we make this work where nobody's getting pissed off with each other and there's not like a favoritism in it? And there was just an opportunity for one of the reunion shows for me to go to Chicago, and it was one hell of a crazy story to make it happen. But, pushed and shoved for everybody to get back to the soundboard because no cameras were allowed. Some of the shots that I have became the shots that were used on every tour that had come out or every show that came out since. So, I guess I got them stuff that they liked. So
that's pretty cool. And it gave you more, it created more opportunities.
It did. Yeah. Like being one of the people that shoots for them definitely has given some sort of, like, I hate to say it, some sort of clout. It definitely helps.
You can say it. It's fine.
Yeah. It's one of those things. I personally never thought that this stuff would be happening. But it's like, especially even though the industry seems very large, it's very small. Managers all know each other. Publicists all know each other. Venue people all know each other. Other photographers know each other. And the one thing that I've always learned is just to be nice to people at the same time. That will go 10 times further. And I've always found it that like you can be a decent photographer and it can take you 10 times further if you're really nice and know how to network versus being a phenomenal photographer and not knowing how to stay humble and checking yourself when you can. And all of a sudden it destroys every opportunity that you have in the process.
That's
exactly I agree with that. Yeah, I agree with that.
So people
gotta make a good impression.
I see it on a regular basis. And it's like, there's one person that I looked up to for many years that just has constant internet battles with people about, anywhere from photo credit to all this other stuff out there. And it's like, you're painting a bad image for yourself, especially when you want to try to attack people online. It's like, just walk away from it. There's not enough time in my day to focus on negative energy, because all that stuff will come back to bite you in the ass later down the road.
I mean, what do you think, Jed? It is frustrating, right? Sometimes when, you see other photographers get accredited for a show that you wanted to shoot and you're not accredited for that show, and you have to kind of bite down on it. I know Kevin's probably experienced that as well. What do you think about that? I mean, you do have to stay humble, right?
For sure.
Come, right, at some point.
Kevin is exactly right. I actually had my own experience where it kind of like made me realize, especially about the internet. So, I mean, we're all in probably a lot of these concert photography groups that you see on Facebook and such. And there was one in particular. Now I shoot this festival. I shoot a festival every year that I really love, and I'm good friends with the person that's in charge of the media. And I was in a photography group, and I saw where someone had posted something about, they were complaining about cell phones in the pit or something like that. And I had complained about these two guys that said that they basically said that they have a fake magazine and they got into a photo credential with a fake magazine, essentially like a. And so I was like, yeah, there was these kids in the photo pit of that festival, and they said they had a fake magazine. Well, I had no idea that the person in charge of the media was in that concert photography group, saw my comment, emailed me and said, Jen, why didn't you just email me and let me know about that? And she was like, who was it? And I said, I explained to her what the magazine was, and they're like, she was like, we knew about them. They were a satire magazine from the college, and they actually get good views, and that's why they picked that magazine. So from then on, I was very, it was eye-opening, because I was like, you know, not only that, it makes the media team look bad when you sit there and complain about, you know, who's getting into these festivals, who's in the pit, because you don't know. It could be people from the band that are using their cell phones for social media content for the band. Like there's a picture I took of a Backstreet Boy at a festival, and all that people say when they see that picture is, who's that girl in the pit with a cell phone? She actually worked for the festival, and she was the social media content person that was uploading for the festival. So, I mean, you gotta be careful.
I'm gonna go to that shot right now so our audience can see.
Oh, yeah.
Right,
You can see her.
So here she is right in the corner there. I was gonna actually mention that to you.
Yes. She works for the festival, and she gets paid to do that. So she is there for iHeart to do the social media content. And so that's like, they have people like that at every festival, and you just don't know who they are with. So don't just assume. But yeah, and you've got to be very careful who you're, talking to in these groups. You can come off very complainy and like unappreciative. I mean, at the end of the day, we're all there to do a job. I mean, just be professional, let people do what they're doing, and just worry about yourself is what I'm saying. Stay humble. There's so many people in the pits a lot of times that are just, rude, and there's no reason for it. We're all there to do a job.
Right, exactly. Hey, Zach,
you know how with that photo, Jen, before that photo of the Backstreet Boy, when I saw that, I was thinking, I had a feeling that she was a worker, like not just a fan, because I could see in her phone is charging to a little plug, and fans don't usually charge. I've always seen social media people always have battery plugged in, so I was like, she's probably somebody that works there.
Well, and there's not many people in the pit. There's only a select few photographers that even get hired on, and then you have the live video people. So having one person there doing social media, it's pretty obvious she's there for a reason. She's there to do a job, and a lot of other people too are. So just let them do their thing.
Yeah, that does happen. Go ahead, Zach.
Yeah, I was just going to say, to piggyback off that, like there's so much that goes on with the little I've learned. There's so much that goes on behind the scenes that we just don't know about leading up to a concert, and there's so much back and forth with PR people and media agencies and all of that stuff that you don't know. That like some of the times at MSG, they couldn't allow all the different media outlets in, so they would use the house photos out. Or sometimes they wouldn't allow any type of media. So there could be an agreement where the PR person or one person could be taking photos or videos on their cell phone to distribute to people. So they might not look like they're a regular social media person or any type of photographer or anything like that. But it's agreed upon that they should be there. So you never know what's done. And that's where like we're all photographers. That's what we know. And that's where I agree with all you guys, that you kind of stay with, always make a good impression, and you never know who you're going to meet and who you interact with.
Yeah, I mean, there were times, I'm sure there's times where even the Madison Square Garden photographers can't shoot a particular artist, right? I mean, I know that's happened
all the time.
Yeah, I mean, it's happened to me at Hammerstein a ton. I mean, the difference with I think with you as a house photographer at Madison Square Garden, and sort of how I have my house gig over at Hammerstein is at least in the beginning. Now when events get back to normal, I was basically not shooting concerts for them anymore. I was just shooting house room private event setups. But before that, when I first started shooting for them, I was shooting everything, which included concerts. So I would, I had my ID, and it, much like you, it just said, a house photographer, Hammerstein Ballroom. And I would show up on, whatever shows, whatever concerts were there. And I would just show up and I'd shoot. So I'd walk into the pit. I'd have my ID. I showed the security guards. Most of the guys knew me at that point. And every once in a while,
important, right?
Yeah, it is important. But every once in a while, at least in the very, very beginning, I'd be in the pit with 6 other photographers, and the PR person would be in the pit, maybe off to the side, and they'd be like, "Who are you?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm the house photographer." So what was going on, at least what was going on regarding the way I had it at Hammerstein was just assuming that I was shooting every single show, and they were not really contacting, say, Live Nation, who will then contact the PR firm and say, "There's a house photographer that's going to be covering the show for us tonight." I would just show up. So when the PR person was there, they'd ask who I was, and they're like, "You're not supposed to be here. You shouldn't be shooting here." So that was a source of frustration for me. And as time wore on, and as I continued to shoot concerts there, knowing that, I kind of made myself invisible on a lot of it, because I wouldn't be, I didn't want to get sort of chased out, even though, technically I was getting paid to shoot for Hammerstein, say like a Hozier show or something like that. But PR didn't know I was there. They had no idea, because the contracts are signed off so early on, even though it says in the contract, Manhattan Center, Hammerstein Ballroom has a house photographer. No one's looking at that in a 30-page contract with one line that says, we have a house photographer and he's permitted to shoot blah, blah, blah. And you sign off on that. You know what I mean? So with you guys, it's different, right? Because you were already assigned to that show. The PR firm knew you guys were going to be there.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's a little different than Hammerstein, but the PR firm, in the case with MSG, it was in-house. So it wasn't ever an external PR firm. So I worked with those people all the time. They knew the whole department. They even knew a lot of our freelancers all the time, all of our regular freelancers. So they would know when they would see us, they know, "Oh, we don't need to worry about you because we know that you're shooting with us." Depending on the artist, there are sometimes releases like you guys all know that you'd have to sign, or contracts that might have to be signed ahead of time or not. And they would send that over to us, and we would work together. It was just, and sometimes, like to earlier in your point about if we're allowed to shoot the show or not, sometimes it was preferred that the house photography group would shoot the show for everybody, and they would share it if it was a limited artist, if they only wanted a handful of photographers. Other times they didn't care, and it could be however many people that the PR team department would approve of. And there was I remember talking to some of them before. There's a standard that they would have. It had to be like a legitimate news source and whatever arguments like that they needed to have to be able to shoot. But sometimes if it was everybody, then we would be there as well, and then we would use our images would be used for like on the immediate use of our social. But then it was also to archive the events happening. That was a big part of our department, was to archive everything that was going on at all the venues. And that's something that's a little different than a media photographer or any other type of photographer, because we could be shooting whatever the show was for archival purposes. So sometimes that means not even shooting like classic concert photos like we all have seen. Sometimes it could just be documenting the stage setup, or documenting whatever the arena looks like, because it could be different, or it could be to prove like how the show happened, and how to say like, "Oh, this is how we can do a show in the future to promote it to other artists." Granted, obviously a lot of artists know Madison Square Garden, so it's a little different, but it could be done. Sometimes it was also the theater at Madison Square Garden is a smaller venue within it, and that can be done in so many different ways. So it wasn't even just concerts; it was other like events that could be held in there that we would also be shooting. So it was a unique situation, because it was all in-house with the photography and all in-house with the PR agency. But there were also times where, like one of the photos that you had pulled up before, it was the Elton John photo. That Elton John, Miley Cyrus was at the Grammys, the Grammys, it is such a big event that's not organized by Madison Square Garden. That was organized, and it was outside PR agency. I don't really know all the details, but I just know that the PR agency was outside, but they worked with our internal department. So with something like this, we were allowed to shoot the house photography team. We were allowed to shoot that, but it was we because it was a huge event. It's not like we could dictate where we want to be from or anything like that. So it was a lot more stricter rules. So it's more of, in that case, it's more of where they're renting the venue from MSG and they're using it as their own purpose.
Right. So Kevin, you also shot at the theater at Madison Square Garden, right? It was a lot of shows there.
In the theater itself or in actual Madison? So
both. Have you shot at the theater? I know. I remember Slayer had played there, and I don't know if you had shot. So my cat's walking behind me. So have you shot at the theater at Madison? It's a really nice venue.
Madison Square Garden. It's a small, intimate space. It kind of feels almost like a Webster Hall feel to me, as opposed to like an arena at the same time. Right. So it's a lot more intimate, a lot of bands that play in there. You're a lot more up close and personal. I think even like one of the Cirque shows right before COVID hit was in there as well.
That's right. Yeah.
That too.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had shot Slayer there moons ago with Gojira.
Yeah.
I forget who else was on that show, but
was it the one with Lamb of God was on that show as well?
Might have been them.
Yeah,
them.
so
I shot Lamb of God though. But.
I think I was supposed to shoot that show there, and I do a lot of work with Lamb of God, and like everything was squared on the list, and everything was fine. I was shooting directly for them, and you're just such a small, insignificant cog in the mix of what's going on in a show that. Right. Things are always bound to happen that can kind of throw a wrench in the mix. And I got a call from Randy from Lamb right before the show started that passes actually had to be taken away from people because there just wasn't the capacity to be able to handle things. And this was like me shooting directly for the band. And like, I think they were more upset than me at the same time. And it was like, I was on my way there with my camera gear. So my main concern was like, okay, well, I can get into the show, but now I'm not able to get into the venue with all my camera equipment. So what can I do? And like, it was like Checkpoint Charlie, like dropping my camera off at like the FDNY station down the road because my buddy's FDNY and like getting to the venue and like all this other stuff. And it's like the way that I've always looked at it is hopefully there's always going to be another show. Hopefully, we're living in a world now where obviously a lot of musicians have been passing away and that's never going to change. And we're dealing with no shows right now. So that's a huge thing. But if a show doesn't happen and I wasn't able to shoot that one, it just wasn't meant to be. I try to look at it as always like a glass half full situation where I'm like, there's always going to be something else that comes up. There's always going to be another opportunity that poses itself to me to where I might be able to seize that opportunity. So if something didn't happen and it didn't work out, there's plenty of shows that I've showed up to credentialed for very well-known outlets where just something happened and my name wasn't on the list. You may be a little bit bummed at the moment that something like that happens, but again, you're a small cog in a huge mix of a production on a major tour. So like, if it's not going to work out, me causing a riff with any of the people that are just like checking tickets or trying to get a hold of the tour person and me being like, hey, look, I have the information on my phone. Clearly it shows that I've been approved. I understand you don't have your list. I'll hit up their publicist or whoever it is just to see what's going to happen. I'll stay off to the side.
Right.
Excuse me. But if you don't wind up hearing anything, it is what it is. You call it a night. That's it. And half the times I've been to venues where like they saw my information, but they couldn't get a hold of the publicist. They clearly knew that I was probably supposed to be there. And because I was nice, the people at the venue were like, hey, we clearly see there's an issue here. Here's your pass. Sorry about any issues. I've also seen it where people have gotten really salty with them as I'm waiting myself. And they don't wind up getting in because they're sitting there for 20 minutes yelling at them while this person's just trying to check in a line full of people behind them.
It makes such a big difference if you're nice. And sometimes it's out of your control, but if you're nice, it makes such a big difference.
Yeah,
It's funny because there was a show at Barclays Center, the Toto show, and I forget who else was on that show. It was someone else with the Toto, and I wasn't. And I was approved for one band, but not for some reason they didn't have me approved for Toto. I was like,
I've had tons.
So I'm standing in the lobby waiting to go in, and they're like, "Well, you're not on the list for this band." I'm like, "All right, I'm going home." I just put my backpack on, just walked out, went home. I was like, I don't have to shoot Toto that bad. I mean, I was there. The point is, you make the trek, and it's nice to be able to shoot the show that, you intended to shoot, or at least one of the artists that you intended to shoot. But, and sometimes that happens too, right? Where you got credentials for one band, but you don't have credentials for the next band. Yeah, and bands like Falling in Reverse do that quite a bit. And in fact,
let people know ahead of time.
There was a show. I don't know if you remember. There was a show in Jersey called the Rock and Carnival Festival.
Yeah, I shot that.
Did you shoot that? Yeah. So there was a lot of different bands. There's a bunch of stages. I don't know if you guys know about it, but there's a bunch of stages there. And there was Lita Ford was there, and I forget. There was like tons and tons of bands. Godsmack played, and it was like an amazing, an amazing festival with multi stages. Yeah. And I think Slash played that night, and you had to have a separate credential to shoot Slash. Like literally, your regular badge didn't work. Like I was there all day from the morning until the night, but I had to have a separate credential. Like I had to get approved separately just to shoot Slash.
Yeah,
which I did not do. I was like, I'm not going to forget it. It's not happening.
Well, I mean, in the reverse of that, I think it was the VMAs. One year we're at MSG, and all of the media photographers were allowed to shoot. Were allowed to shoot everybody except Beyonce. She had a performance, I remember, and everybody could shoot. All photographers could shoot everybody except for her, even though everybody was approved already. It was just that one artist, and that's where it's artist dependent, and that's where there's so much that goes in.
Sure, there was one photographer that was able to shoot Beyonce, and I don't want to mention that name, but I'm sure there was one person. Anyway, I want to move this a little bit forward, and I had some questions for all of you guys. So one of them was, what's your best concert experience? And I'm going to bring up a photo right now that Jen took, and it'd be hard to say that this wasn't one of your best concert experiences, because this is one of the best shots that I've ever seen of her.
Well, thank you. That definitely was one of the best experiences. I mean, it was a bucket list to be able to shoot iHeart. So they have a spectacular photo team. And for a couple of years, I had done the live photo editing. And what that is basically their awesome photo team is there taking pictures. And as they're taking pictures, they have runners that will run cards to the editors, and we're editing real fast so that they can put socials, update socials in real time of these images that they're taking. So I had done that for a couple of years, and I had reached out to the photo editor at the time, and I was like, "Look, if you guys ever need a photographer, I know you got a good team, but if you ever need one, let me know." It just so happened they needed one for that year. So I got on the photo team that year, which was 2019. Yeah, because we didn't have one in 2020. Hopefully 2021, I'm hoping. But that was an awesome experience because there's only a few of us as far as photographers go. And a lot of the photographers are roaming around trying to get images from different angles. But in the pit, that's at the end of the thrust. You're also having to make sure that you're not in the line of sight of the video people, because they're doing the live feed for video. And so I was going around the thrust trying to get out of the way of the videographer who is at the center of the thrust. And she just happened to fall down and lean back. And I was like, click, 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 just get it real quick and then go. I love Miley Cyrus.
That's a great shot.
Yeah, it is. Was that because I saw other photos? I know other photographers that were there with you that night, and I looked at a bunch of their photos because you and I are friends on Facebook, so I had seen that one that you had posted, and I saw other photographers that had similar shots, but not that shot. So you would just, that's a great shot. You were in a great position for it. She landed in the right spot where you were, and it's just magic happens sometimes.
Yeah,
I mean,
sometimes it's just luck. So I got lucky
well,
with that one.
you could say, listen, you could say it's luck, I'll say it's magic. I know, Kevin's gotten a lot of that stuff too, and right, so we've all benefited from luck, but also it's the years of experience in the positioning and knowing, where you need to be and all that stuff. And I know Kevin has shot a lot of metal shows and stuff like that. And they're tough. It takes a lot of time to really learn, how to get great captures. I mean, here's one of his shots right here of James, right? What concert, what show was that? I don't remember what show that was.
This was MetLife, I think 2017.
Oh, okay.
And to me, this was always just seemed like a filler shot in like the portfolio.
Mm-hmm.
But somehow this shot has like resonated so much with a lot of like Metallica fans and all that stuff. And like this shot, I will definitely say has paid my rent, a couple times over throughout the years. So it's like, I have to just be like, all right, I have to call it for what it is. Sometimes like, even if you might not think that it's like the most spectacular thing, there are also other eyes that may be like, yeah, I really dig it. And like, it was just those, I don't know, I'm sure everybody else probably has shot Metallica at some given point. You're dealing with a lot of stuff that's happening at those shows. You're dealing with a very high stage. You're dealing with, security telling you at any given point, you're not allowed to have, like the little footstools or, in the pit at any time. So like you're having to try to find angles that you can really work. The stage is massive. So like, you don't know if the musician's going to run over to you at one moment or not run over. You don't know if you're going to need a 300 mil lens or a 24-70 at 1 second. So everything's kind of changing at any given moment. And you're also dealing with their film crew running throughout, like behind them the whole time. So it's like trying to be able to find a moment when you don't have this person with a giant like camera like this behind them becomes the challenge. And somehow I wound up grabbing that shot. It was pretty damn clean and a lot of people liked it. And, it just
sharp too,
which is nice. It stayed in my portfolio. That was one of the things I always tried to pride on myself as well, is I wanted to try to make my photos look like glass, like you could reach in and grab it at the same time. And, especially with like even small venues with really bad lighting, like that was the one thing I always tried to strive to, is like making sure that I could get the cleanest possible photos when like other people around me were like, we shot the same show next to each other. How the hell did your shot look like this? And my shot looks like this. And it's like, well, it's also a bit of smoke and mirrors in the back end of knowing how to use your camera and knowing how to edit as well. Like
editing is really big. This is one of Jen's shots. Jen, where was this? This was an outside venue when you
shot. That was this. It might have been the same tour. It was when they did arenas and they also did stadiums.
That's Central Spark. Is that where that is?
That's Atlanta Braves Stadium.
Oh, Brave. Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah, but as Kevin was saying, that thrust is so big that it is like a workout just to run to go to different sides of that thrust, because it was so big. And like you said, you just hope that you are on that side that they come to. I happen to have a photographer that was telling me, he said he had done the research and he said they're going to come on the thrust here in a little bit, so I would stay here. So thankfully I had a nice photographer friend in the pit with me and he told me that. So that's how I was able to get that shot.
Yeah, awesome. Their stage is really big. Did you shoot them when they came to town over at MSG at any point?
No, I didn't. I don't think they were. I don't remember when they were there in the recent years, but it might have been before my time too.
May have been, yeah. May have been before your time. What's more or less the best concert experience you've had shooting over at the Garden over the years?
I mean, my favorite band of all time is Queen. So I think that was a huge bucket list moment for me to be able to shoot them. I've been to a couple of their concerts already, and everything about them I love. So when they finally came to MSG, I was like, oh man, I hope they allow photographers. And I had seen from the tour, I knew that they were allowing people, and it worked out that I was able to shoot it myself, and I was super excited about it. And
shot. That's
thank
so
you.
awesome.
Thank you. I was so happy about it. And I mean, if anything I've learned, because I know the band, I follow them so much. I know various things that they tend to do, which is very helpful. Even if you don't know the band a lot, doing that kind of research ahead of time to know, like the one person you were talking about, Jen, that tipped you off to they kind of run out and come over to the left side at one point. Knowing that type of stuff is helpful. So I knew that they always that Adam and Brian come out to the front of the stage at a certain point. So I was prepping for that and hoping for that. And actually, one of the things that I've learned just through recent years is, especially with the instant need for social media and always posting stuff to social media for venues and media outlets, was trying to just differentiate and get a little bit more so that you don't, so they can, the social media people can have more to work with. So with that specific image, I was happy because I started doing, he was doing a whole dance. That was a whole sequence to a whole dance that Adam Lambert was doing. And I just so happened to get a good string of that whole thing. So I was like, you know what, I turned that string. It was probably like 9 or 15 pictures maybe into a GIF of him essentially dancing. And I don't even remember now if they used it or not. I just know that being able to provide stuff like that it was helpful, because then they have more to work with and they're happier. And then it leaves, like you were talking about before, Kevin, it leaves a good impression with people when you work with them and they're like, oh, I remember he does a little bit extra, or he goes a little above and beyond, and they might later down the line, you never know, they might remember you again and say, oh, he's done some of this stuff, let's work with him again in that way. So you just never know. But Cream was just a bucket list for me, so I was stoked about it.
Yeah,
Were they
that's great.
soundboard?
What's that?
Were they soundboard?
They were in Soundboard. They were their stage kind of came out like a little a thin stage in the very end of it, so that you were allowed to be in the edge of that stage, right where I took that photo was basically where you could be. And there was probably, I think there was like half a dozen or maybe 10 photographers, so you're kind of packed in there, so you couldn't really move a whole lot. But that's where it was just hopeful that they did something in your area, which was nice. And I don't know. So when you're stuck at the soundboard or stuck at a certain area of the pit, it's tough because you never know. It's sometimes you're just stuck with what the band is doing. That's actually, there's another photo I sent you about Mark, for Red Hot Chili Peppers I shot, and I was kind of because you're talking about the soundboard. I kind of try to learn something from every photo I've been already experienced I've taken, and I was thrilled with this photo because it's got the three. I know everything about Chili Peppers. These are the three guys. It's the main photo. I know there's the guitarist in it, but to me, this is the shot that I always want of them. And this was
Great.
I think 2018 maybe, at a benefit concert, a benefit show, and it was comedians. It wasn't even a concert or anything, but they were the end of it. They had a couple songs where they played. So and this was in the theater, and a couple months prior in that year, they were headlining MSG. Trombone Shorty was opening for them, and I shot them at MSG, and I was so excited about it. And I was especially because we had pit access, so we were able to roam a lot. And usually with pit, I just like shooting the pit a little bit better than soundboard sometimes, because you can have a little bit more creativity on your shots, and you can choose. Especially Kevin, with you with being the band photographer, you have a little bit more access. So with the pit, I feel like you have more access than just shooting the soundboard. Mm-hmm. So I was excited to shoot the Chili Peppers from the pit because I can be wherever I wanted within the constraints of the pit. But that being said, I didn't really feel like I got a lot of great shots because I don't know, they were running around everywhere, and I wanted a shot with all of them, and it's tough. And I got some good shots of them all together, but someone's face a little weird. And then that shot that you just had up was from the theater, where it wasn't like a main concert for them. I was able to shoot all the comedians leading up to this, and then their whole set, which was I don't remember how many songs now, but I was stuck to the soundboard with them. And this kind of just made me like learn. I guess I took out of this was that like sometimes just wait for the moment and like be prepared for something to happen. And as long as you have the gear ready, and as long as you have like the mental capacity to know, well, something might happen in front of you, and I'm not worried tight on one of the guys. And I had something like that where it just so happened that he had his drumsticks up, and they were jumping, and they had a good facial expressions because no one was blinking. And so I was just happy that it worked out in that way, and kind of taught me to to wait to see what kind of happens on the stage and not always try and run for the moment, and the moment might happen to you, I guess, is the moral of that story.
It's definitely a great shot. I love it. And he
Yeah,
looks
I
so
love
much
it.
like Will Ferrell. It's crazy, right?
It's crazy. Yeah.
Don't tell him that.
I know. There's that what was that Saturday Night Live where they play against each other?
Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
they speak on each other.
Is that what it was Saturday Night Live, right? That's
so,
classic.
yeah.
Great. That's such a great. So, guys, I want to talk a little bit about what gear you guys use. We don't get into that all that much. So, Jen, what type of stuff do you usually use when you're out there?
I'm a Nikon user, so I have a D850 and a D810 body. I use my harness, my Black Rapid harness, to hold those, and 7200, and I use a 50 millimeter and a F. What is it? Is it 24? Yeah, 1424. I use a 1424. I want a 2470, but I've got because I end up in a lot of small venues sometimes locally in New Orleans, so I get the 1424 to get a little bit wider. But the only thing I don't like about that is I don't like to shoot the whole show with that, because the images kind of look all the same, because it's kind of got a little bit of a fisheye effect on it. So I try to use that sparingly just to get some good like up close shots, but mainly use my 7200 and my 50 millimeter.
That's great. Good choices. Kevin, what are you up to? Sony or Canon?
So I shot Canon for 5 years, went to Sony for like 2.5, 3 years, realized shooting music with Sony, you destroy a lot of them. So after you destroy
it's a tough camera to work with.
Yeah, after you destroy a couple of those cameras, you realize, well, it takes good pictures. It's something that's not worth the hassle of getting it damaged in a pit. So then I went to Nikon. I've been a Nikon and Leica shooter for the better half of 4.5 years, something like that, 4 years.
You've run the gamut, huh? I didn't know.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a gear nerd, so I like trying everything. That's the thing. So, my Nikon bag consists of the 14 to 24 to 24 to 70, the 70 to 200. I have an 85 1.4. I have the 50 1.4. I know I'm missing some other random things at the same time, 300 mil 2.8 for like the Good Morning America shoot stuff, because we're all like put behind the crowd for that. All that stuff. I feel like, I have to have a whole random kit of things, considering New York venues are all like different sizes. Like one day I might be shooting in a venue for 500 people, and the next venue I'm shooting in a venue that has 35,000 people. So
yeah, definitely. It varies out here for sure. Zach, you guys were using Canon, right? That was sort of the thing over at the Garden.
Yeah. We had the department had a lot of gear for everybody to use, and it worked out nicely because I personally also shoot Canon, so it worked out nice. We had a slew of different bodies and all different types of lenses. We had 1DX, 1DX2, 3, 5D Mark IVs. We had a wide range of primarily zoom lenses. When you got higher up, we had some of the prime, like the 400 fix or 300. I ended up using a lot the 2 to 400, which was nice in certain situations, but because of the f-stops, it wasn't always ideal for really dark shows. But that distance and having that range was very nice. But I'm curious how you guys did you ever, because you guys have some prime lenses in your kits. What do you choose? When do you choose to use prime versus zoom, or what do you prefer?
You can start, Jen.
I use my 50 millimeter. I mean, I'm at not a huge venue, so we're really up close. So I like depth of field. I really like to isolate a picture, a person in a picture. So I like a lot of depth of field. So I use my 50 millimeter 1.8 if I'm trying to like isolate one member. It's good for 7200 as well, if you can just back up a little bit to the side stage. I don't like to be up on top of artists anyway, so I'm usually either at the back of a pit or on the side. But if I'm wanting to get like a good close-up shot, like that's when I'll use my prime. But yeah.
I never use primes ever. I mean, I have a couple I use in portrait, work, but I never ever shoot primes in concert world. Kevin, you shot them, right?
Yeah, so I usually only keep primes in my bag if I know that I'm going to be doing work before or after with the band. A lot of times, if I'm with a band and I'm like back in in the dressing room or on the tour bus, or like we're like out and about wandering around in the city, just doing that type of stuff, I'll tend to have like a 35 prime on me, or a 28 or something along that line, something that I can also keep discreet, like shooting Leica stuff, like, small, almost point and shoot style, like size camera. They're a lot more discreet, and I can not be the sore thumb in the room, because everybody knows I'm the photographer, but like the last thing you want to be is like that person, like the beacon to everybody in the room that I've got a camera out. You want people to be relaxed. You want people to be comfortable. So like, that's when I tend to like using the primes, is like just being a little bit more discreet in situations, unless I'm doing portraits. If I'm doing portraits, then obviously I've got my 85 out, or I've got a 105 at the same time. But yeah, that's really it. Like, they don't hit the stage really much at all. That's on my cameras tend to be the 24 to 70 and it's 70 to 200. 14 to 24 is if I'm going to be at a really small venue where I know I need to be able to get the shots, or if the musician themselves is like, hey, I'm going to come over to you during this song at this point, and get in your face because I want a certain shot. Then I know, okay, at that moment, I'll put on the 14 to 24, because like someone's literally getting 3 inches away from my lens, and I want to be able to capture their whole body in the shot. Yeah.
So guys, I'm going to throw this at you, and Jen, you can answer it first, and we'll sort of go around the horn here. And it's probably never been more fitting than it is right now. But what do you guys miss the most about shooting shows? Jen, go ahead.
I mean, other than just shooting the shows, I miss that. But I do miss, something I didn't think that I would miss, because I'm actually the type of person that I don't like to get into crowds and stuff. I try to avoid crowds. So when I'm at a show, I'm really just trying to be and take pictures and leave, because I don't like to be in the huge crowds. But now I really just miss it. I miss hearing people singing songs, especially like if they playing music before a band goes on and everyone's singing together. Like I remember a Green Day show, right before the Green Day show, they were playing Queen Bohemian Rhapsody, and just hearing everybody sing that, it's just like all being together. I really miss that.
Kevin, go ahead.
Yeah, I miss the camaraderie. I think between the venue staff, because they're putting in a lot of long hours dealing with a lot of drunk people, like you're used to seeing those people on a regular basis. You're used to seeing the photographers within your community on a regular basis, and it becomes like the fans also, like you start to know a lot of fans because they show up early, and the ones that are in the front row are like, I saw you at this show, or I saw you at that show, and that's definitely helped, because like I sell a lot of prints, because like, they were at that show and they're like, oh, I know you have a good photo, and I could wind up more than likely marketing at the same time.
Right.
Being able to like have that camaraderie and like see people from one venue to the next, and just be able to like have the interaction has always been nice. Once that kind of disappeared overnight, it is a bit of a mental shift. I'll probably say that for a lot of people, being able to like, it's almost like tour depression for a lot of musicians. Musicians, that they have a known presence on stage, and while they're on tour, everybody knows them. Some of these musicians have 9 to 5 jobs when they're not on tour. So like they go back and they're like laying carpet or doing other random jobs to be able to stay afloat off tour. And like they get depressed during this process, because like people knew them, and now they're laying carpet for some random person that doesn't care who they are.
Right.
So it's like there is a mental shift, and it's like you have to be able to figure out a way to curb that and to be able to truck forward.
Zach.
I mean, I kind of agree with both of you guys about the people and the camaraderie, but I feel like in terms of the shooting side of it and the photography, I think I miss the like every concert always being something different, and it's not like it was all cookie cutter and it was always the same thing. You never knew if it was going to be a single artist or a band, or what the stage was going to be like, or where you could be shooting from, and it being so different for what you would capture. I think I miss a lot of that, but definitely like the camaraderie with people. I agree with you, and seeing like especially a lot of the security guards that you always would see all the time, and different people in the arena that you would see all the time, and just once we can get back to all that, that'll be a nice thing.
It will be
conversation with each other.
Yeah, you won't take it for granted anymore. I'll tell you that.
No, without a doubt. So this is like a 3-question thing I asked a lot of people when I was doing my 3 No Flash podcast, which I'd love to bring back one day. We'll see what happens with that. So it's a 3-parter. I'll give it to Jen first, since Jen's up in the top corner and I see her right there. So I'll give it to you. So it kind of goes like this. So what shows do you wish? What show do you wish you could have shot? What band or artist do you wish you shot? Could be retired or otherwise. It could be someone like Elvis or, Janis Joplin or something. And what band or artist are you looking forward to shooting?
I want the one I wish I could have shot, which was supposed to happen before COVID, was My Chemical Romance.
Oh yeah.
That's my number one bucket list. The one that I wish I could, or what was it? What was the second one? It was
artist or band you wish you could have shot, someone retired or otherwise.
Linkin Park for sure, because that was actually before Chester passed. That was one of my next shows on my bucket list that I had put in, that I was going to put in to shoot, and I didn't get to. I love Linkin Park. I'm a big Linkin Park fan, so that really upset me. And then the next one is, what was the last one? I'm sorry.
What band are you looking forward to shooting?
Hopefully My Chemical Romance. You could just go back.
These two, that's fair. That's totally fair. Zach, what about you? Same questions.
One I wish I could have shot would be the original Clean with Freddie.
Okay. Yeah, I always said that too. That was one of mine when I proposed this question to myself. I always wanted to shoot Queen with Freddie. Yeah, for sure. I agree.
I love that. And then what I'm excited for when things come back, I would say Bruno Mars.
Okay, interesting.
I would love that. I shot him once actually at the Grammys from that other photo, but he just did one song. But being able to do an entire thing of him would be great.
Kevin, what show do you wish you could have shot that you missed?
So.
And that you wanted to always shoot that you may never get a chance to.
So this is where I always try to remain optimistic with things. If it didn't happen, it didn't happen. If if I wanted to be able to try to shoot it and it didn't happen, I just write it off. There's always another time for it. As far as something that I wish I could have shot, knowing, if I'm 90 years old at this point and could have shot it, the Beatles. I would definitely love to have photographed some of the Beatlemania, hysteria, all that stuff during that time, or Led Zeppelin. Like any of that era would have been phenomenal. As far as something that I'm looking forward to, I'm looking forward to be back out with my Misfits family. I just, Jerry only called me earlier today to see how I've been doing, and he's got some things in the works, but we're all just kind of on pause right now. Like we're just waiting for things to kind of come up for air. So yeah. I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to be out with my family,
I agree, man. It's been a long year, very, very long, strange year. And hopefully it'll get back to some normalcy by the summer, at least some outside shows, one would hope. Maybe not major tours, but at least some one-offs and some nice outside shows in the park and that sort of thing until the fall, where, we'll start getting some more indoors. But I don't see big tours happening until 2022. I just think it's, having been involved in a lot of that stuff with the lighting manufacturers and that sort of thing, and talking with a lot of the lighting designers, they don't see it until, it's a big engine that's got it's got a lot of parts and gears to it.
Rockville might be happening.
Are saying 20.
The one-off festivals will happen. I think Aftershock is happening up in Sacramento towards the end of the year in the fall. And so there'll be one-off like stuff like that. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if Governor's Ball will happen. It's certainly possible, right, Kevin? That's in June. That's out here in New York.
They canceled Coachella. I think that people preemptively have been able to just try to lock down space in hopes of this. The problem is when you're dealing with all these bands and contracts, these bands want retainers ahead of time with heavy deposits. And I don't think any funder is willing to put money out right now, knowing that there's a high probability that they're not going to be able to get that money back. We're talking globally, there were billions of dollars lost just in deposits that went to bands to be able to fund a lot of these shows. I mean, like, so many music festivals are crippled now. Like a lot of music festivals have gone bankrupt simply for the fact that like they couldn't get that money back, and that those bands needed to at least have that portion of the money just to be able to pay out their road crew and pay out the lighting people and, you know, whatever other people that weren't able to actually go on the road to be able to do anything.
Yeah, it's been a rough time for everyone, you know, and I feel bad for all those folks that I would chat with periodically at these shows, that I became friendly with, the lighting designers, and you know, it just really sucks.
Such a big trickle down effect.
Yeah,
think about.
It's tremendous. It's tremendous. But at least we didn't really get into the whole COVID thing. We kind of breezed over that. We just right at the end here. But anyway,
I think the weekend concert that they just announced is the first tour that I've seen that was for like an artist and not just a festival. That's 2022 though, like you were saying.
Yeah, I think there's a date that they, which is interesting. There's a date for them towards the end of the year, I think in the fall, at the new arena that's being built by Belmont Park, which is the UBS, I think it's called.
Yep.
So which is run by, I think, folks at Oakview Capital or whatever. So yeah, I think that's one of the shows that might be the very first concert that venue actually hosts. But yeah, as far as like big tours, 20, 30 cities, you know, you're not going to see Aerosmith or bands like that until 2022, because they're just there's so much, like Kevin's saying, there's so much that goes into it, and so much money and deposits and stuff that just isn't, you just can't get that cash back.
Well, also people aren't going to be wanting to buy tickets, especially people who had tickets and didn't get their refunds back. They're going to be hesitant to be buying tickets until last minute, like right up until the show date, just to make sure that they're not going to get, stiffed on, ticket sales. So I definitely see what he's saying. Like there is deposits for bands and stuff that have to be put out in advance. And, they're banking on these people buying tickets. And I just think that there's going to be people hesitant to buy tickets until they know for sure that like that concert's going to happen.
Right. So guys, I want you to plug your websites. Just let the audience know that all of the photos that I showed, plus a lot more, will be available for you guys to buy if you want, from each of our photographers here that we're talking on the panel tonight. So Jen, what's your website, and sort of how can people reach out to you?
My website is jendphotography.com. It's with Jen with 2 N's, D like Devereaux. And you can find me on Instagram at jendphotography as well. Okay,
Kevin, what's up?
So my website is kevinrcwilson.com. That's just my name, Kevin Robert Charles Wilson. So kevinrcwilson.com. And my Instagram and other social medias, you can find me by Kevin Wilson NYC. That's where I'm at.
Zach, you have a website, or it's social? I know that.
Yeah, I'm on social more. On my Instagram is Zach T Lane, ZACKTLANE, and that's where you can find my stuff.
And then we'll reach out to you guys. So thanks for joining us on the first Depth of Field concert photography show. I want to thank our guests, Jen, Kevin, and Zach. You could find this show and other shows on their website, aroundthelens.com, and check them out. There's a lot of cool shows coming up that they'll also be doing. Guys, thank you so much for doing this. This was a blast, and I'm glad everybody seems to be in high spirits, at least, having not shot concerts in nearly a year.
Well, we got cameras. We got to find other ways to use them. So,
absolutely,
trying to be doing other stuff.
Thanks, guys. Best of luck the rest of the year. Right. Hope to be talking to some of you guys soon.
Thanks.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you very much. It was great.
Have a good night.
Thanks.